The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today we will continue to answer emails, this one from Topeka, Kansas. The listener is challenging our panel on some claims that we made regarding the recent presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump, that Donald Trump made many false statements during that debate, and he is challenging us to fact-check that debate and provide proof to him that Donald Trump was selling disinformation and misinformation. So we take on the challenge, so let's listen in.
A question from Thomas in Topeka. And Thomas says that our podcast is liberally biased and that apparently we live in an alternate universe. And that all we can do is vilify one of the best presidents we've ever had. And I'd be honestly very curious to know how Thomas measures Trump as one of the best presidents we've ever had. But it says...
Apparently not by dead Americans, but go on.
Yeah. Well, it says after the debate, we all said that Trump had lied about everything, but that as usual, we gave no specifics. So Thomas is curious as to what we think he specifically lied about.
So we're not allowed to answer everything? I take it that's the problem.
You could take it, answer the whole thing. I don't know. Do you want me to... I've got the AP, some of the false claims.
Okay, let's take
from
a few.
AP. And
First of all, as far as being biased is concerned, none of us are journalists. We're all academics. What's the expression? Truth has a liberal bias. I mean, it's not. Nobody here is trying to be biased. We're trying to be as objective as we can be within the limits of what we see as being the truth. And when you say something like the greatest president ever, or words to that effect, that is extremely subjective, obviously, and at least in my view, utterly ridiculous. But let's go on, we'll go on one by one if you like.
Sure. Well, one of Trump's claims regarding that he said in the debate was regarding January 6th, where Trump, and this is a quote, said they talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol and in many cases were ushered in police. And of course, Trump doesn't say who they were. And AP says that is false. The attack on the U.S. Capitol was and I'm quoting from AP, was the deadliest assault on the American power in over 200 years, as thoroughly documented by video, photographs, and people who were there. Thousands of people descended on Capitol Hill in what became a brutal scene of hand-to-hand combat with the police. And then it goes on. In an internal memo on March 7th, 2023, U.S. Capitol Police Chief J. Thomas Manger said that the allegation that our officers helped the rioters and acted as tour guides is outrageous and false. A Capitol Police spokesperson confirmed the memo's authenticity to the Associated Press. More than 1,400 people have been charged with federal crimes stemming from the riot. More than 850 people have pleaded guilty to crimes, and 200 others have been convicted at trial.
Okay, so my comment to that is it all depends on what your definition of small is. With those numbers there, I wouldn't call that small. That is probably the average attendance at a minor league baseball game. So that is not exactly small. And number two, and I would agree with Scott, if you're going to say that Trump was the greatest president ever, you've already shown a bias that, again, you are more than welcome to have that opinion. We welcome that opinion. Everybody has to have an opinion on that. I think you're kind of eliminating a few other really great presidents that we have had, and compared, apples and oranges in this. And that's not a pun. Apples and oranges in this case. And again, you can look at the videos and you can say that, oh, well, this is all fake news, that this is all photoshopped or whatever you want to say about it. And again, if that is the position that you're taking, there really is no discussion to be had about it, because I would say that is a position of a true alternate reality.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And here's the thing: one of the proof points that people use to illustrate that the police were escorting the January 6th people around is video of them with Jason Chansley. Is that his name? Whatever, Justin Chansley, Jason, the guy with the buffalo head and the QAnon shaman. So here's a guy who comes in, he's clearly unhinged, right? And he's got, tattoos all over him. He's wearing a big buffalo head or whatever it is with the horns on it. And he's carrying a spear, like a literal metal spear. And these cops did a great job of following him around and containing him, basically, and not allowing him to stab anybody, but not escalate the situation by tasing him or anything like that. Just kept a good eye on him with a number of different people. When he went into the Senate chambers and started looking around and got up and declared himself the head of the free world or whatever crap he was saying, they patiently waited for him to get it out of his system and then asked him to leave and escorted him out. Other people broke things, broke into offices, were hunting down people. It's always a difficult situation to say what would have happened had they found Mike Pence or Nancy Pelosi or anybody else, Josh Hawley. What would have happened if they found those people? And you have an angry mob whipped into a frenzy by the president of the United States. And, we got lucky that day that only one person was killed, outright by a gunshot, and that more people weren't killed. And, there were others there was a person who was trampled and, someone and officers who suffered grave dangers and suicides and all kinds of things like that after the fact. But all of it, would not have happened had not Trump whipped that crowd into a fury and sent them down there. And that is January 6th in a nutshell. And anybody who tries to, Troy Nehls, the congressman, was one of the people pushing the barricade in the House of Representatives chamber, pushing the barricade against the door and yelling at the people on the other side of the barricade, who included the young woman who got shot. And later on said that it was a peaceful demonstration. So I'm sorry, but I'm not the most objective person in the world, but I'm not going to turn around after experiencing something like Troy Nehls did, where he was clearly fearing for the life of himself and his colleagues, to the point where he's yelling at those people and then later on revise that reality and say that it was a peaceful protest. Getting on to some other things, just if I could bring this one up because it's been bothering me since the debate and before then, is this idea that in blue states or wherever a baby can be born and the doctor and mother will conspire to execute an infant. And according to Trump, that is perfectly legal. Sorry, Tom from Topeka, whatever your name is, but that doesn't happen in the United States of America. In no place is infanticide considered legal. And if you're one of
Yeah,
those people, and I'm guessing you are, Mr. Out there in Topeka, that wants the Ten Commandments and the laws of the lawgivers up on the walls of schools, remember this one. According to those lawgivers, life begins when a baby draws its first breath and not before then. In the Jewish religion, nobody buys a crib, nobody buys clothing, nobody buys anything for a baby until the baby is born. Nothing is taken for granted because in the Jewish religion, life begins at the first breath, not at conception, not at 15 weeks, not at 24 weeks, not at 5, 6 weeks, whatever it is. If you think that this is murder and you're supporting a number of weeks where it's okay to murder a baby, I'm sorry, but you've lost me right there. Plus, in no place is infanticide legal. Thank you very much.
yeah,
No.
and there is no such thing as post-birth abortion.
No.
And
Nope.
again, that's going to whip you all into a frenzy out there, and you're going to think that he's telling the truth, but he's lying to you. And the sooner you realize that he's lying to you, the happier you will be jettisoning him and forgetting all about him as he fades into the dustbin of history.
And I can't really add much to that. My faith is Roman Catholic, and of course we do not believe in contraception because we still live in the 12th century in many ways. But the idea of infanticide is so abhorrent, not only to the Jewish faith, not only to the Christian faith, and to say that this actually goes on. My only thing would be show me an example. Show me what is an example. See, that's one of the things that kind of gets me with this whole thing of fact checking. Trump says something completely off the wall, and there is no examples. Show us. Well, everybody knows, and there's where you know he's telling a lie. Every time he says, "Well, everybody knows this," everybody shakes their head like the little dogs in the back of the, and you remember those ones that used to bounce their head in the back of the car? That's what they do, and they go with it. And it's absolutely incredible to me that people actually buy into this stuff. But then again, you're going to have people that are going to do it. But I can say this right now. I have never heard of a single case in the Western world in the 21st century where infanticide was practiced or accepted.
Exactly.
And I wanted to add, Mark, to your point of where Trump says, everybody knows. Another thing that Trump says that has always bothered me, he'll say, "I know that, and you know it too." And he said that during the debate to the two moderators. And every time he says that, no one in the audience, well, it may not have been the moderator's role, but whenever he says that, "I know it and you know it too," no one ever says, "No, I don't know
No.
that." And every time he says that, that's always what I think. "No, I don't know that," because it's not true.
Well, that's a standard psychological ploy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a standard psychological ploy.
Yeah. I find that very irritating. So next, another fact correction is where Trump said regarding then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's actions on January 6th, quote, "because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard and she turned them down," unquote. The facts are that Pelosi did not direct the National Guard. Further, as the Capitol came under attack, she and then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called for military assistance, including from the National Guard. AP goes on to say the Capitol Police Board makes the decision on whether to call the National Guard troops to the Capitol. It is made up of the House Sergeant at Arms, the Senate Sergeant at Arms, and the architect of the Capitol. The board decided not to call the guard ahead of the insurrection, but did eventually request assistance after the rioting had already begun and the troops arrived several hours later. AP goes on to say the House Sergeant at Arms reported to Pelosi and the Senate Sergeant at Arms reported to McConnell. There is no evidence that either Pelosi or McConnell directed the security officials not to call the guard beforehand. Drew Hamill, a then spokesperson for Pelosi, said after the insurrection that Pelosi was never informed of such a request.
Yeah, this is an easy one.
Do we even have to do this? Hey, Tom from Topeka, look up an AP fact check and get it yourself. Mm-hmm. We could add some value to this conversation at this juncture. It would only be this, really. That obviously the moderators, as Brooke pointed out, did not take it upon themselves to fact check. And so a torrent of lies got out there. I think it was like something over 30 lies in a hour and a half debate. That's a lot of lying to do, and you can look it up yourself.
Yes,
it's simple to do and see what Trump lied about. The part that's disturbing is that Joe Biden could not fight back on those lies, other than, and this is where the sort of presidential bubble that presidents live in. It sounded like he had never heard these lies before, and he would go, the idea that, something would something like that would happen. The idea is outrageous. And he obviously wasn't better prepared to respond to Trump the way that Kamala Harris would, because Kamala Harris possesses that most rare of abilities, which is the prosecutorial demeanor and philosophy of going after people and not ever taking what they say and letting it go, but fighting against them. I would say Sheldon Whitehead is probably better at it than she is, but she definitely has that prosecutor mentality where she goes after people, and she went after Bill Barr. She went after some of the Supreme Court judges that Kavanaugh, I think, no, it wouldn't have been Kavanaugh. She would have been in the White House. Who was it that she demanded to know if there was ever a law that restricted the use of bodily autonomy for men? And they couldn't answer that.
No, that would have been Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I remember.
Was it? But why would Kamala Harris be asking that question? She was already the vice president. Oh, she wasn't the vice president.
No, she wasn't the vice president.
She was in the Senate. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. So, senior moment for me. Kick me off the ballot.
Well, I guess you won't be Mark's vice president choice there, Scott.
Yeah. All right. Right. So that kind of line of questioning that she does, I mean, Trump would wither under that, and I really would love to see it. I don't think that he would ever deign to debate her, because he would lose handily. But I'm almost looking forward to it, and I really think that that's a big deficit that Joe has that Kamala doesn't have, and that something that we should be looking forward to seeing in the next few weeks.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say that there's two people I would love to see Trump debate, just before I get into this. Number one would be Jamie Raskin, who does have that prosecutorial skill set. And the other one is Pete Buttigieg. I would love to see that one. Trump wouldn't stand a chance. So Thomas, I hate to say this, but normally we don't cut listener emails short, but we're really going to cut this one short and move on to something else, because again, as Scott has said, this is easily looked up. I know you're not going to find this on the places that you normally go for your information. You're not going to hear this on Newsmax. You're not going to hear this on OAN or on Fox News or on any of the rest of them. And it is your right to consume your information and to accept what information is given to you. That is your total right to do. But please, 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 do not subject the rest of us to this, to the foolishness. The fact is that no, Nancy Pelosi is not the commander-in-chief. No, the president of the United States at the time, Donald Trump, didn't even know the rules. And I'm going to guarantee the fact that there's a board that can call this, I'm going to guarantee, Tom, you didn't know that. And I will guarantee that probably 80% of the populace of the United States didn't know that. So I would say before you make these, before you go off and take your information, do a little bit of critical thinking and do a little bit of research and research these questions that you're asking, because the bottom line is that if your guy, the greatest president in the face that's ever been, doesn't know that he's the commander-in-chief and the only one, and the Speaker of the House does not have the power to call in the National Guard, I'm sorry, that's a bit of a problem where the president doesn't even understand how the government works. So that's all I'm going to say about that one. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Science. The JCIS is an open journal for upcoming scholars. The JCIS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis. The JCIS is a publication of Nova Works, a scholarly depository at Nova Southeastern University. A link to the journal is in our description. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, who is our editing partner, and Podkite, who does all of our analytics. We'd also like to thank iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source for music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd also like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershwer, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.